let's talk about some of your information sources with respect to macro. So what does that look like these days? Like, what's your overall macro thesis, and like how does that relate to being a bit bullish? I assume that's your default posture on crypto.
Yeah, so you can make it really simple. We are growing our debt too fast. My first real job, not as a gardener, as a bartender, was at the Office of Management and Budget. I was 20 years old. I worked at ONB. And this might be the most important thing I say in this whole podcast. I learned then, 1984, that's how old I am, that the federal government is allowed, I put quotation marks, is supposed to spend about 20% of GDP and tries to tax 20% of GDP. We did it in 1999, the only year we've had a balanced budget in the last 30, 40, Bill Clinton president, tech bubble, a lot of tax receipts. So we had a balanced budget in 1999. That was it. Only time we balanced the budget. But it doesn't matter if you were Bush or Clinton, 20% was your budget. Now, you might spend more on military and less on education. You might spend more on education, less on military. That was the balance between Republican and Democrat, right? Where are you going to spend that money and how you're going to tax it, right? Guys like Steve Forbes said we should have a flat tax, but it was always, how do we get to 20%? When Trump came into office, he said, screw that. I like spending money. So he expanded government faster than almost any president in history, spending. And then COVID happened. And then we felt what we needed to, right? We ran a experiment in UBI, and it worked. Give people money, they get happy. They start spending it, right? And Biden came in, he's like, oh my God, I got pushed in by the progressives. And there's a lot of projects I think would be really neat to do. It is a beautiful idea to wipe out people's student debt if money grew on trees, right? And so this idea, even because inflation had been so low for so long, of modern monetary theory, I think people ask me that. I was like, when I was 7, my mom told me money didn't grow on trees. But Elizabeth Warren is telling people money grows on trees. It doesn't. It creates inflation. And so between Trump and Biden, what I would say are the two worst presidents in the history of this country in terms of spending, we blasted out and have normalized. So what do you think the federal budget is this year as a percentage of GDP?
As a percentage of GDP?
I'm not going to put you on this page. It's 26%.
Okay.
It's supposed to be 20. So 6%, it's literally almost $1.5 to $2 trillion more than they're supposed to be able to spend. And we're not taxing enough. We're taxing 20%. That leaves the 6% budget deficit. Who's going to pay for that? Your fucking grandkids or your kids, my grandkids. Forget how old I am, right? And so the only way to turn that, and this is a long-winded answer, but it's the important thing. I said this might be the important. The only way to stop that is to cut entitlements. What are entitlements? Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. No politician wants to tell old people, you don't get the money you paid in for. You don't get your hip replacement, right? We have the most inefficient medical system in the world. And those 3 things eat up almost all this money. And so if you don't go for the entitlements, which I don't think anyone will, you'll talk about balancing, but you won't even get close. And so why I'm so optimistic Bitcoin is really unfortunate. I'd rather our government deal with the crappy finances so we don't bankrupt our grandkids, because we will. We are bankrupting this country. Mark my freaking words. It's what I've done my whole entire career is watch this stuff. And we don't have the political will to do anything about it. The Democrats don't, the Republicans don't. Whoever's going to get elected, mark my words, the very first thing they say is, we need to rebuild the military. We've got this Chinese threat and the Russian threat and the threat at the border. And so you're going to see military spending go up under both presidents, President Biden or President Harris. All right, where are you going to take the money from? Unless you go after entitlements, which they will not, we're going to have 26% spending for the next 6 years. We've normalized a quantum jump in how big our government is. Right? Republicans say we're for small government. Bullshit. They went from 20% to 26%. That was Donald Trump. He was for big government. The Democrats are for big government. And so we literally have grown the size of the government by 25% in 8 years. So what the fuck are people talking about? We're for small government. We literally have and so that's why Bitcoin is such a core holding, right? When I left, 2012, doesn't seem so long ago. The average house price in America was $183,000. Today, it's over $400,000. Wait a minute. The average house price more than doubled in 12 years. That's insane. And so unless you were holding Bitcoin, like if you hold Bitcoin in 2012 to now, you did pretty well. The house prices didn't double, right? They shrunk. But if you held dollars, even if you got your 0% interest and 2% interest and 4% interest, now 5% interest, you're smoked. So young kids, your salaries haven't doubled, right? If you're a entry worker at Macy's or at Goldman Sachs, high-end or middle-end or high-end jobs, your salaries are up 30%. They're not up 100%. So your chance of buying a house has gone right down the tubes. And so at one point, like our country has to rebalance the budget, get debt to GDP to come down, but we're not going to. And so I think we're going to have a deteriorating, purchasing power of our currency. And that's why hard assets, it's not just Bitcoin. You want to own real estate, you want to own stocks, you want to own gold, you want to own silver. And they're not going to go in a straight line, but they're going to head in that direction. I've always said Bitcoin is a report card on financial stewardship. And our financial stewardship on both left and right now is a D-.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.